What if everything beneath your feet at the Grand Canyon is completely different from what you've been told? For over 100 years, millions of people have stood at the edge of this massive canyon, staring down at layers of ancient rock, believing they were looking at something fully explored and fully understood. They were wrong. Hidden beneath the surface, in total darkness, scientists have just uncovered a hidden world that nobody had ever fully seen before. A maze of caves, rivers, and tunnels stretching for miles underground, supplying life-saving water to millions of visitors every single year. And what researchers found down there wasn't just surprising, it revealed something unsettling about how fragile this hidden system actually is. This is the story of what scientists just discovered beneath one of the most famous landmarks on Earth. And by the end, you'll never look at the Grand Canyon the same way again. This discovery matters because of one simple fact. Millions of people depend on water they don't even know is coming from a place scientists barely understand. Every year, more than 6 million visitors walk through Grand Canyon National Park, almost every single one of them. At some point, stops to refill a water bottle at a park water station. Very few of them ever stop to wonder where that water actually comes from. The answer lies far beneath the canyon floor, inside a hidden underground world that had never been properly mapped until now. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly what scientists found hidden beneath the Grand Canyon, how they mapped it for the very first time, and why some researchers are now worried about how easily this entire system could be disrupted. But to understand what they found, you first need to understand what most people get wrong about the Grand Canyon in the first place. Most people assume the Grand Canyon is simply a giant, empty trench carved out over millions of years by the Colorado River. That part is true, but it's only half the story. Beneath the exposed rock layers that tourists photograph from the rim, there is an entirely different landscape, one made of ancient limestone, riddled with cracks, tunnels, and hollow chambers, formed over unimaginable stretches of time as water slowly dissolved the rock from the inside out. This type of landscape has a name. Scientists call it karst terrain. Geologists often compare karst rock to Swiss cheese, solid on the outside but full of holes, channels, and hidden openings on the inside. Water doesn't just sit on top of karst rock. It disappears into it, traveling through invisible pathways deep underground. Inside the Grand Canyon, this hidden network sits buried more than 2,000 feet below the surface, tucked inside layers of ancient rock called redwall and Moive limestone, deep within a section of the park known as the Kaibab Plateau. For decades, scientists knew this underground world existed, but almost nobody had actually gone deep enough or had the right tools to properly map it. That was about to change. But that wasn't the most surprising part of what they eventually found. At the heart of this hidden underground world sits a single, powerful spring, known as Roaring Springs. This one spring is responsible for something enormous. It supplies the entire drinking water system for every single visitor and staff member inside Grand Canyon National Park. An operation supporting more than 6 million people. For decades afterward, that underground world remained largely a mystery, hinted at, but never fully explored. Researchers knew snowmelt from the plateau above eventually made its way down into the cave system, feeding Roaring Springs. But exactly how it traveled, how fast it moved, and what pathways it followed underground remained almost completely unknown. One researcher later described the entire hidden system using a simple, chilling comparison. It was, in his words, like staring into a black box. Scientists could see water going in at the top of the plateau. They could see it coming out at the spring. But what happened in between remained almost a total mystery. That mystery was about to get a lot more complicated. To finally understand what was happening underground, a research team from Northern Arizona University decided to go inside and see it for themselves. The team, led by a graduate researcher and a professor specializing in remote sensing, set out to build the very first detailed three-dimensional maps of the caves hidden beneath the Grand Canyon's north rim. This wasn't a quick weekend trip. It was an extreme, physically demanding expedition into total darkness. Researchers carried specialized laser scanning equipment, along with packs weighing up to 55 pounds, through terrain so remote that simply reaching some cave entrances required 2 full days of hiking. Once inside the caves, the real challenge began. Team members climbed steep rock formations, rappelled down vertical drops, crawled through narrow, cramped passageways, and floated through sections of caves completely flooded with water, all while carrying delicate scanning equipment meant to capture every detail of the hidden world around them. Over the course of 45 grueling days, spread across the project, the team explored and scanned roughly 6 miles of underground tunnels and crawlways, across 3 separate cave systems, including the cave that feeds Roaring Springs itself. Using their laser scanners, they captured everything. The width of every passage, the height of every chamber, the exact shape of walls and ceilings hidden from sunlight for possibly thousands of years. What they built afterward was something that had never existed before. Complete high-resolution 3-dimensional model of the hidden cave world running beneath one of the most visited national parks on the planet. One researcher later admitted she had no real idea just how large and how long these underground caves actually were, until she saw the final map laid out in front of her. But mapping the caves themselves was only the beginning of the story. Once scientists finally had a detailed map of the underground caves, a much bigger question remained. How exactly does water actually move through this hidden system? This is where the earlier comparison to a black box becomes so important. Knowing the shape of the caves is one thing, knowing exactly how fast water travels through them, and which paths it actually follows, is something else entirely. To dig deeper into this question, researchers turned to a different technique. They released special tracer dye into the water at different points across the plateau, then watched to see where and when that dye eventually reappeared. What they found surprised them. In one experiment, dye that had been released upstream ended up showing up almost everywhere except the one spring researchers originally expected it to appear from. This suggested something important. The underground water table inside this karst system isn't fixed. It shifts and changes, sometimes dramatically, depending on the season and how much water is currently flowing through the system. When water levels are high, water may travel through completely different underground pathways than it does when water levels are low. This single discovery reshaped how scientists understood the entire hidden system. It wasn't one simple, predictable tunnel carrying water from the plateau to the spring. It was an incredibly complex, shifting network, more like a living, breathing structure than a fixed, static pipe. And there was something else hidden inside that data, something that added an entirely new layer to the mystery. Alongside the fresh snowmelt flowing down from the surface, researchers identified something they called primordial water. Ancient water rising up from extremely deep underground through cracks and fault lines in the earth, mixing together with the newer water flowing in from above. In other words, some of the water reaching the surface at Roaring Springs may have been trapped deep underground for an extraordinarily long time, long before slowly making its way up into the modern water cycle. This hidden system wasn't just complex, it was ancient, dynamic, and far more delicate than anyone had previously assumed. Then researchers uncovered something that turned the story from fascinating into genuinely urgent. Here's the problem with karst systems like the one hidden beneath the Grand Canyon. The same fast-moving pathways that deliver clean drinking water so efficiently can also carry something far more dangerous just as quickly. Because water moves rapidly through these underground channels, it often bypasses the slow, natural filtration process that normally helps clean groundwater as it travels through solid rock and soil. In a system like this, contaminants entering at the surface could potentially reach the spring and the park's drinking water supply far faster than in a typical groundwater system. This isn't just a theoretical concern. Researchers specifically pointed to 2 realistic risks. Wildfire runoff, carrying ash and debris into the system after a fire, and harmful bacteria, like E. coli, entering the water supply from the surface above. And this concern became even more immediate because of a real event. A wildfire known as the Dragon Bravo fire altered sections of the landscape sitting directly above where this underground water system begins its journey. Researchers say this change now needs to be factored into their ongoing studies, since fire-altered land can behave very differently when it comes to absorbing and channeling water compared to untouched forest. To better understand these risks moving forward, scientists have expanded their research even further. Alongside their underground cave maps, they're now using airborne laser scanning technology and more than 40 years of satellite data to track sinkholes across the plateau and monitor how snowmelt patterns have changed over time. Their goal is to finally connect everything happening above ground, the snow, the fires, the shifting climate, with everything happening far below the surface, inside this ancient hidden cave system. One researcher explained why this moment felt so exciting. For the first time, patterns hypothesized by scientists more than 50 years ago are finally being confirmed with real, detailed data. And with modern mapping tools now available, researchers believe similar hidden systems in other parts of the world could benefit from this exact same kind of investigation. This research has already been published for other scientists around the world to study and build upon. So here's where this incredible story leaves us. The Grand Canyon, one of the most photographed, most visited, most seemingly understood places on the planet, still holds an entire hidden world underground that we are only just beginning to truly map and understand. A single spring, feeding an entire national park's water supply, sits at the end of a hidden, shifting, ancient underground journey that scientists spent decades unable to fully explain. Now, thanks to laser scanners, incredibly difficult fieldwork, and years of dedicated research, that hidden black box is finally starting to open up. But this story isn't finished yet. Researchers are still working to fully understand exactly how vulnerable this system really is, and how to protect it for the millions of people, and countless plants and animals, who depend on it every single year. The next time you see a photograph of the Grand Canyon, remember this. What you're looking at is only half the story. Beneath those famous red and orange cliffs lies an entire hidden world, still being explored, still being mapped, and still holding secrets that scientists are only now beginning to uncover. If this story changed the way you think about the Grand Canyon, let me know in the comments. Did you know any of this was hidden underground? If you enjoyed learning about the secrets hiding beneath one of the world's most famous landmarks, make sure you like this video and subscribe for more incredible true stories about our planet. Because sometimes the most amazing discoveries aren't found by looking up at the sky, they're found by looking straight down into the darkness beneath our feet.